Okay, I thought I would just come on to Facebook and give a little live update on what's happening and in terms of the quest for a national inquiry, my new quest to um, run for the position in the legislature of British Columbia, and what all that means, and all of the work that's being done behind the scenes. So I thought I would come on and give an update. We'll see if anybody is still around. And yeah, just talk about some of the details and stuff. But we'll maybe wait until some people come on board. Let me just see here. Bring up some of the issues that have been discussed recently. And let's see here. I'm missing something. There we are. Just get my sound so I can hear. Let's see, my message for my sample vote has got a whopping one view. So censorship, that's a big issue. But yeah, so this is going to be one of the challenges. So just to update people, my quest to get on the ballot for the upcoming British Columbia election was successful, thanks to the work of some people behind the scenes for me on the ground. Candy, not going to say Candy's last name, but Candy especially is very helpful to me on the ground. Robin, some other names I'm not going to mention. Chris has been working hard on this for me. Chris McKay, people will know who Chris McKay is. Other people supporting me in other ways, and we were able to get the required number of signatures in a very short time. I didn't initially think it was possible, but we did it. So I am on the ballot now, and am going to be running as a member, or for the position of member of the Legislative Assembly of British Columbia. Now, of course, I'll be leading with my primary issue, but when you run for office, you can't be like a one-issue person and a one-trick pony, so I'm going to have to bring in some other stuff. Fortunately, one of my degrees from Simon Fraser University is political science. Okay, so it's not like I am not familiar with politics in general. There are some specific issues, but those are always sort of constantly changing as time goes by. And because I'm an advocate of moving us towards a system that includes a direct democracy engine, right? The most important thing, I think, for an MLA is to be somebody who's honest and has integrity and is looking out for the public. And also, I would say the job of an MLA is to inform the public and make sure that the public is getting all of the information from all sides. So even on, say, a contentious issue like SOGI 123, where everybody knows, where I land in that debate, I don't think that particularly the gender confusing elements of SOGI 123 should be taught in schools at all. But if I was an MLA, I think that what I would do is we would put the issue to a vote, right, to determine what the people want. But a vote from the people is only going to be as accurate as the information that the people have been given. And one of the problems with SOGI 123 has been that people have not been given the full story. All they've gotten is one side of the debate, the establishment perspective, as put out by the ARC Foundation and various LGBTQ groups, and the government who sort of echoes those, and Big Pharma, who stands to profit to the tune of billions of dollars by, a program that will brainwash and confuse kids and turn them into lifelong pharmaceutical customers. So we've only had this one side of the debate. When I've done my public talks across British Columbia, one of the things that I found is frequently I've had people come in who have said that they came to hear me speak because they heard of all the sort of controversy around me. And in one case, there was this woman who said that she thought that maybe she would come after me in the question and answer period and, really call out me for my bigotry and stuff like that, right? But then when she listened to my presentation, after the presentation, she came up to me and she was like, basically, drop-jawed and saying, like, why have I never heard this information before? I thought I was coming here to sort of listen to and expose some sort of bigot, but everything you said made perfect sense, right? So this is just an illustration of the fact that the decisions of the public are only going to be as accurate as the information that they are provided with, right? And when information is being controlled in a central way and given only one perspective, that is a recipe for manipulation by powerful vested interests and what they call non-pecuniary interests as well. So I think the job of an MLA is to, my phone is bleeping at me here. Let me just turn that off. Suddenly goes crazy. Okay. Silence phone. Okay. So one of the jobs of an MLA, in my sort of perfect democratic system, is to make sure that the public not only is being informed about all sides of the debate so they can make an educated decision, for those who are politically active, and they always are sort of the ones who determine things in society, those who get politically active and care about things, but make sure they get all of the information and that they have a right to do that, and that their right is not interfered with by the other side, because that is what has happened in SOGI 123, and the whole issue of the medical transitioning of children is that the other side of this debate has been shutting down my side and myself specifically from being able to communicate the other side of the debate to the public. That is a very important part of a functional democracy, is that you have a broad range of ideas and a full and open discussion. And if you allow anybody to undermine that aspect of democracy, you're in trouble, right? You can't let that happen. So, yeah, there's a couple of things embedded there. So the right for people to be fully informed, the right to speak, collecting and disseminating that information to the public so they can learn about the issues in every side, the pros and cons and all of this stuff. And then hopefully building some sort of direct democracy engine where on key issues, I mean, you don't want to micromanage everything. So, the public's making every decision that a government has to do, but certainly on key issues and contentious issues, this needs to go to the public, but it needs to go to the public in as fair and open and considered way as possible. So that'll be something that I'll be looking at. I'm really going to push that aspect of it. Some other issues that are going to be coming up, like the fact that, curiously, during COVID-19, the government has decided to slash funding for homeschooling and these types of things. And it's like, okay, well, that's a strange thing to do in the middle of an alleged pandemic, is to, cut funding to homeschooling. You'd think you'd want to maybe even increase funding for homeschooling, right? Supposing you sort of think that the virus, and the government seems to be maintaining that this virus is a big threat. Okay, all right, well then let's encourage people to take care of education from home, so they don't have to go to schools, public schools, and that type of thing. But they've cut that, and I don't think that that's fair. But I'm not going to get into all the sort of subtleties of what my platform's going to be when I'm running for office. Suffice it to say that there's no way around the fact that everybody's going to know what my prime issue is, right? So that's going to be out there. We'll see what the media does with it, if anything, because the media has, hi, Ivan, hi, Margot, hi, Cindy. The media has two methodologies of dealing with me, or they have had over the years. One is to sort of misrepresent and demonize me. The other is to ignore me. So if we gauge what's happening in Victoria right now, it appears that the strategy is going to be one of ignoring me. Now, we've got some people on the ground that are trying to sort of poke at the media so we can get the media active in this regard. But the Times columnist listed all of the candidates and listed me as some nondescript independent candidate and placed me in the wrong riding. So, thanks for nothing, while the other opponents got descriptions of who they are and stuff. And it's like, okay, so the people of the media in Victoria, who I've dealt with extensively, right, over the last 2-3 years, the media of Victoria knows who I am, and yet, they're not even going to mention who I am. It's like, it's not a story that the leading opponent of the SOGI 123 in British Columbia is going against the Minister of Education. That's not a story, really. So it looks like they may be adopting a strategy of ignore me. So that's where I might need help from people. At some point, we're going to have to organize, and may have to organize this to get people sort of emailing or Facebook commenting to the media outlets in the area to make sure that they, give me a fair shake and at least let me into the debate. I mean, it's not like there's a massive list of candidates. There's only 5, and one's a communist, and I don't, I think somebody running as a like, I don't even know why you'd run as a communist anymore, quite frankly, unless you're just trying to be controversial just for the sake of being controversial, because running as a communist is almost like running as a Nazi in terms of the reception you're going to get from the public. So why would you do that? So there is a communist there. So I would say there's only 4 people on the ballot who can possibly appeal to the mainstream. It's a left-leaning riding or district, heavily voted in favor of the NDP and the Green Party. Like 80% of the votes or something are what you would call left votes in that riding. So it looks like a daunting task for me going in. But the thing that I think is advantageous here is that my issue on child transitioning, we could say, is favored by what you call socially conservative people. This is true. I align with some of the concerns and family values and stuff of people on the right. But fiscally, I'm actually kind of center left leaning, right? So there is room for me. Like, I can debate with people in that riding who are left-leaning and try to win some of them over to my position by giving them some information that maybe they've never heard before, and looking at this in a different way. And particularly with parents and stuff, and grandparents too, I would say, do you want your children being chemically and pharmaceutically sterilized, right? So hook them in with that, and then let them know that, listen, if you're worried about, say, funding for seniors, right, and long-term health care and stuff like that, I'm not an austerity person, right? I'm not a person who's going to say slash, don't fund anything, right? That's not me. So I can sort of exist in that sort of environment and work with that environment, and sincerely too, not just sort of patronizing people. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting project. We've got some good people, some motivated people on the ground. As you can tell, we got everything together in a heck of a hurry. So that's going to be useful. Although the next stage is, there's going to be a lot of footwork, right, and canvassing, and that can be a challenge in terms of getting people who are motivated enough to actually get out and do something, right? You can get a lot of support from people, valued support you don't want to denigrate or dismiss as not important. Like when people support you financially or even just emotionally and stuff, that's all important stuff. It's all helpful to the cause. But foot soldiers on the beat, that is sort of like the next level. That takes sort of people who have that extra level of motivation to do that, and they can be hard to find. We've got a few, but we'll see. And there's some expenses and stuff that are going to be incurred in that process for printing postcards. So we're trying to keep the budget down as much as possible. I've already gone thousands of dollars into debt over the years on my political activism. So I don't want to, totally bury myself financially in this process unless I have to. Fortunately, I guess there's a cap there because I can only spend $1,200 of my own money on the campaign because candidates are under the same limitations for contributions in British Columbia that an individual citizen is. So can't go over $1,200. So that caps it out. I think we've put our budget in the neighborhood of about a couple $1,000s, maybe a little more. I'm not going to spend the kind of big money that the big parties do. They've got the big money, and they have the big money because they have romanced big money people and serve big money interests. So I need to approach things maybe a little differently. Part of that's going to be getting the media to engage me and making them like integrity and honesty in the media is going to be a big part of this, right? Because as I say, when you've got the leading opponent of SOGI 123 in BC running against the education minister, that should be a story, and the media should be hard pressed not to cover that story or be sort of scrambling to explain themselves as why they're not covering it. But I can't do that alone. Like I can give them heck and they'll just ignore me. But if they start getting flooded with emails and stuff saying, hey, why aren't you covering this story? That will do it. So if we can sort of, encourage the media to cover the story, then they'll move into that other mode that they usually cover me with, which is to demonize me and misrepresent me and stuff. But that's okay. Once sort of the cameras and microphones are turned my direction, that's where I do my thing. I'm more than capable of turning that sort of spin around and getting it back towards the truth and stuff. But we need them to look my direction, right? And not just treat me as another independent candidate that they can ignore. They need to know that there's something a little different about me and this race. So that's my task, and hopefully I can count on some people out there to assist me, and anybody can assist me, right? Anybody who's concerned about this can help by sending emails to media outlets and stuff when I ask for that. So yeah, one of the things I'm going to face is the immediate accusation that, well, you're just a one-issue person, and that's it. But as I say, that's not true. I think what has happened over the last 3 or 4 years is that I've become, I would argue, I mean, people talk a lot about Meghan Murphy, but I would argue that what has happened to me is the preeminent example of cancel culture run amok in Canada and the dangers of that. Okay, so you've got sort of somebody from the LGBT community who's a transgender identified, who's out there talking about the dangers of children being, confused and turned into slaves to the pharmaceutical complex. And I have been, attacked and shut down and silenced, and the victim of cancel culture run amok. And this, I think, shows the extremities of cancel culture and the danger that this poses to democracy. So that is a big issue. And today, I would argue that most people have a sense that there is something wrong with the world today. Right? There is something wrong with our governments And there seems to be something like there's a little too much unanimity in what's going on around the globe right now. And I think a lot of people sense this and they're concerned about this. So I think one of the most important things that we can have in legislatures right now is somebody who has, and people know this about me, right? Somebody who has a critical eye, okay, and who's going to be looking for lies and looking for corruption and looking for conflicts of interest and trying to thresh that out as much as possible and holding government and anybody else who might be trying to muscle in on government accountable, right? We need honest people in government more than we need anything else. I mean, you can talk about, and I'm sure they will, that, well, if I'm in the riding of Victoria Swan Lake, I have to know about all the nitty-gritty details of the housing issues in Victoria Swan Lake. A lot of that is like, if you're a new MLA, you got to familiarize yourself with all of that anyway. So yeah, you kind of got to do that. But more importantly, like, the bureaucracy and the engine of society is largely established right now, right? So that will sort of run on its own. And in the decision-making process on any given issue, what I'm going to do is I'm going to fully sort of familiarize myself with the subject on all sides of the subject, and then make the best, most honest decision that I can. And that is, I think, what's needed in government more than anything is somebody who's going to be honest and seek integrity and seek to include and welcome all sort of viewpoints and inform the public as much as possible. That's what we need, not I'm not a big fan of party politics. I was approached when I announced that I was going to try to get onto the ballot. I was approached by 4 different parties actually about running as a party member, and I considered it and I flirted with it. But even if I had made the decision to do that, I'm not really what you call a party person, because I don't believe in towing party lines. I actually think that party discipline, what they call party discipline, is anti-democratic. Okay, so party discipline is a real problem in politics, whether you're talking provincially or nationally. There'll be these issues where they don't really allow members, if you're a member of a party, they won't allow you to vote your conscience. They'll say, okay, we're voting in favor of SOGI 123, and we don't want anybody dissenting on this, right? And they invoke party discipline, and if you don't vote the party line, you're in trouble. You might even be ejected from the party, right? So I think that is a big problem, and I'm not a big fan of that. Actually, I would outlaw party discipline because it is anti-democratic. I believe that all members of parliament should be voting their not only their conscience, but they should be voting to represent the concerns and interests of the riding that they were elected to. Okay, so the people of Swan Lake and Victoria are not going to necessarily want me to, well, they're certainly not going to want me to go into the legislature and vote in a way that I know is contrary to their wishes, right? I'm there to represent them, right? They're not there to represent me or to back me up. I'm there to represent them. And all MLA should be that way and should be allowed to vote freely to represent the wishes of the people that elected them. There are things like people will know that I've got issues and things that concern me and stuff, right? But it becomes my duty as an MLA to talk to the people of the riding and give them reasons why they should see things the way that I do, but not in a deceptive way, like in a fully open way, and then work to garner their support on whatever issue it is. Don't cut my hair, but the curls just don't like, especially if I get a little humidity and stuff outside, I can start getting a frizz, and then I start losing the curl. If it's like a couple of inches shorter, then the weight isn't so bad, and it stays very neatly curled, and I can use bigger curls, which I think look better. This is some of the, did a post the other day about how it's a sort of a trivial issue, but people can be very trivial, and you have to pay attention to it to a certain extent. But thanks for the suggestion, Beverly. We'll see. I'm scheduled to go to the hairdresser on Friday. It's always a little scary for me, especially if I'm saying take a little bit of length off, because then it's like, okay, don't take too much length, and I get all paranoid. But we'll see. So yeah, some of the other issues. So yeah, the good news is I am on the ballot. So that is task number 1 completed. The next task to complete is to get the word out there and hopefully get the media talking about it. People out and about, if you're following anything that's going on in Victoria, in that region there in terms of politics and stuff, trying to stir up interest in what I'm trying to do it will be helpful. Like, so have you heard about Jan Smith? And, it's going against the education minister and is the leading opponent of SOGI. That should be interesting, whatever to sort of generate or get the conversation going. Because independent candidates have it tough, right? Most people vote for parties. So there is a challenge for an independent to getting their message out there. And you can go door to door handing out postcards or flyers or whatever. But a lot of people will just say, thank you very much, and straight into the trash can the moment you go away. So it's important to generate a discussion in the community and get people talking about that. So that'll be a big challenge. And part of that's going to be making sure if there's an all candidates debate that I'm included in that discussion. So like I say, with only 5 candidates, that shouldn't be a big ask, right? I mean, what are you going to do? Just have the 3 big parties debating? I mean, I guess you could, but I'm kind of a controversial figure. So, why not make the debate interesting? Have the Jen in there. I'm very respectful in debates, but I am sort of strong, right? So I'll be strong and I'll be clear. And I'll maybe say things that people don't want to hear, but I don't say them just to be provocative. I say them because it's important to say them. Like when I talk about the pharmaceutical chemical castration and sterilization of children, some people find that to be a strong statement, but it's an important statement, right? It's an important statement that needs to be made. So I would, I'm itching to get into a debate with Rob Fleming on some of these issues. And not just SOGI 1, 2, 3, but some of the other issues in terms of what's going on in our school systems today that he has been a big proponent of. And I would say what the government has been doing in terms of this COVID-19 thing, where this, I think, is another example of the government not sort of fully sort of exploring all of the ideas and stuff. So we've got these anti-lockdown protests and stuff going on, and a lot of people concerned that the government has gone too far. I would say that concerns are valid in terms of the power grab that the state is engaging in, right? Now, I think we can all sort of probably agree that if you've got like, let's say something like the bubonic plague or something equivalent to the bubonic plague, I don't know that we can say that COVID-19 reaches that level. Let's just say you got something equivalent to the bubonic plague raging through your community. Okay, we kind of maybe could agree that in a situation like that, yeah, you kind of want your government to be strong to stop it from spreading, and you don't want people doing things to make things worse. But if you're going to take huge powers like that, you got to justify it, right? And you have to address concerns from the other side. So if it is true, and I'm not saying it's true, but if it is true that the anti-lockdown protesters are or have a valid position, right? Then that position needs to be heard, right? Whether they're right or wrong, there's enough of them that it needs to be addressed by the government. Okay, so they have these concerns about the PCR test, right? And just how serious the virus. All of those things should be debate. Like, why do we keep on having protests over COVID-19 without the government significantly addressing it? I mean, in Ontario, you've got Ford there, and he addresses it, but he typically just comes out and calls them names. He says, "Oh, they're all idiots and retards and stuff like this," right? So he's very sort of dismissive and offensive in his relationship with those people. But there's lots of those people out there, and being insulting towards them and dismissing them like that is not helpful. Right. And it's not really fair. A better way of handling that is sort of stopping and saying, okay, so yes, we got these protests all the time. Let's address this. Okay. So let's be a responsive government and address this. Okay. What are your concerns? Take all of those concerns. You've got like a team of experts there, right? So take all of the concerns and say, okay, so they say this, or you say this. You could have an information website set up real easily to address all of these concerns. Okay. So the PCR test is not reliable. And, they say this, that, and the next thing, right? Then you turn that over to the other side, right? The Bonnie Henry and some of these people, and then have them respond, right? It doesn't have to be Bonnie Henry, but it can be somebody with Bonnie Henry's level of knowledge who can address these things and respond in a way that not only respectfully responds to the concerns of the lockdown people, but sort of responds to everybody. So everybody becomes more informed in the process. That's, to me, it's all about being inclusive, okay? Our government, I would say, over time has become increasingly totalitarian and increasingly exclusionary in terms of their attitude towards the public. And I think that trend needs to be reversed. You look at the kind of social animosity and chaos that's breaking out in the United States. Nobody should want that kind of conflict in their society, right? But you're not going to be able to diffuse that kind of conflict without giving everybody a voice, right? And not provoking it and making it worse, right? So that's all about being inclusive and open to dissenting ideas and dissenting views. So that is a very important thing to be able to address in society, and something that's going to be a key part of my platform in terms of creating a responsive, respectful government that doesn't just demonize anybody who disagrees with them, which is exactly what happened in SOGI 123 and is what is happening with the lockdown. And like I say, whether you agree with the anti-lockdown people or disagree with them is irrelevant. Okay, they have concerns, they have reasons for their concerns, and there is enough of them and enough noise that the government needs to take this seriously and at least listen and address the issues. Right. And if it is true that the government's position is the best on any given issue, that should be able to be easily illustrated in your responses to them. Right. So that's my attitude on that. Let's look at some of the comments here. Yeah, well, I was doing a Zoom meeting earlier and there was some problems with things cutting out. I'm not going to talk about my censorship over the years, but you never know. Problems with the video. Isn't that interesting? Suddenly I've got video and audio problems when I've never had that before. That's interesting. Let me just see if I can do anything to improve that. How pertinent do you think the optics of your appearance are to the general public? Oh, here's Jack. Hi, Jack. Well, ironically, the riding that I'm running in, Victoria Swan Lake, last provincial election, they had a transgender candidate running for the Green Party. Okay, so this is not a new concept to the people of this riding, and that candidate did pretty well. I don't think actually in that area my sort of image and how I present and how I dress in the world is going to be a huge issue with most people. Most people, and I see this in my travels in the community in general, most people trip over themselves to be nice and inclusive, right? This is why so much of the stuff about, how transgender people are in such jeopardy and danger. And to me, it's like, it's nonsense. People trip over themselves to be nice to me and inclusive. It's a very small percentage of people that are nasty, right? Even when I go into, say, a men's room like this, most people don't. Most of the guys don't say a thing or do a thing. They just sort of ignore it. The worst I get are maybe some confused looks about whether or not, are we in the right washroom, that type of thing. Occasionally there'll be like, some guys who are a little more on the jackass side who might, give me sort of snide chuckles and that type of thing. That's about as bad as it's ever. No one's ever like jumped me and beat me up because they, think I'm a freak or anything like that. I think actually in some ways the fact that I am an oddity, right, is going to achieve a task that most independent candidates have to battle with and fight with. As an independent candidate, or as a candidate of say a minor, like a small party, say the Libertarian Party or something, part of your battle is just getting the people to look at you and pay attention to you, right? And I've got that sort of taken care of. People will go through the candidates and they go, well, wait a second, and they'll take a second look. And I've talked about this in my public talks, is that public speakers frequently have the same problem, is that one of your challenges is to get the people to pay attention to you and sort of lock into you when you begin your public talk. I don't have that problem, right? When I go out onto a talk stage, people are instantly like, okay, well, what's this? Who is this, right? So I get people's attention right away. So in some ways, I can be used to my advantage. For people who it's going to be a problem, I don't worry about that. So this actually gets into sort of my experiences with the Christian community. Okay, so I've gone and done church talks all across British Columbia in evangelical churches mainly, public talks, other public talks too, but the churches that I was in were primarily evangelical, right? And there's a real sort of range of different sort of people in the evangelical community, and you will find this minority who are like, just the very sight of me makes them angry because they think that I'm violating God's laws or whatever. My response to them has always been, how I present to the world and how I do things, as long as I'm not trampling on your rights or messing with the minds of your children, what I do is between myself and God, right? And that's how I think your average Christian should view it. So there is this, but there's this tiny minority who really get upset about how I present. Most of the people are more interested in what I have to say. Okay, so I'd say the bulk of the evangelical Christian community that I've talked to across British Columbia strongly support me and what I say, and are grateful for what I'm doing. So I don't think that I'm going to lose much in terms of how I present. Society has actually been conditioned significantly to this point not to sort of let that affect them. It's choppy because Vancouver Island is actually located on the moon. Vancouver Island is located on the moon, and it's controlled by shape-shifting aliens. This is an inside joke for people who know the whole David Icke thing. Yeah, I'm happy about that too, and thanks to everybody who helped me on that. This is good. This is good. John Euler, I just saw you were online. I'm going to get back to continuing work on the long overdue interview I did with you. It is still in the works. I look forward to watching the video a little later. Okay, John Euler with survivorsupport.net. I did some interviews with him. He did some interviews with me. John worked in the Pennsylvania prison system and dealt with sexual predators. So he's an expert on that subject. And we had some interesting discussions on that subject and how it sort of relates to some of what's going on in the world today. John, I would say, sees sexual predation as being a larger part of what's going on with, say, SOGI 123 and some of these programs in schools than I do. And that's fine. People are allowed to disagree and stuff. So he's got his arguments and he'll have to make his arguments. I believe there's always been some degree of, and maybe always will be, some degree of sexual predation that happens around children. So I would not ever dismiss that. And certainly some of the materials we see in schools really has to make any sensible person wonder. But I think the primary driving force behind the whole transgender phenomenon is coming from the establishment in general. And it has reasons that sort of go beyond any sort of sexual motivations, and also, of course, big pharma. Okay, so big pharma stands to make billions and billions of dollars by turning all of these kids into lifelong pharmaceutical customers, and it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that they're going to be at work at that. And when you look at the science that is used over and over again to justify transitioning these kids and putting them on all of these medications over and over again, you see conflicts of interest with pharmaceutical companies. And that's one of the things I talked about and worked at exposing in my public talks. So yeah, John Miller. So yeah, speaking of which, yeah, I'm going to have to, I've got so many projects that I have to do. I have to design information packages. I have to finish my website. I have to make some information videos for people on the ground. It's all very, time crunched. So it seems to be just the way things are for me. This happened to me with the Supreme Court case. Like typically when people end up in court, they have time to prepare, right? What happened with me is I had 48 hours to be in court, and I had to deal with very serious, important issues in that court case over a period of 2 or 3 weeks with, very small windows of time to get myself ready. And I still managed to pull out a bit of a victory out of that. But it was this crazy time crunch where I was, killing myself and losing sleep, getting everything together. And it seems, here we are again, another 3-week period where I really crunched for time and I have to do this. Speaking on Facebook, by the way, I think actually I regard this as part of it's part of what I'm doing, because I need to keep my voice out there and keep people involved, and so it's an important thing. And I may be trying to do more on Facebook actually, because as people become aware of my candidacy, they're going to want to hear more from me, and I may do various information videos on my my platform in terms of what I am concerned about and that type of thing. But my main platform is protecting democracy and freedom, and moving us away from totalitarianism, which I think we're sliding towards, and getting honesty, integrity into government, and of course protecting our children, which is what I'm best known for, not only in British Columbia but across Canada. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how it all goes. And let's see, is there anything else? Well, let me just go through some of the issues that came up on Facebook. This is actually interesting. Let me just see if I can share this with you. Actually, no, we'll just scratch that. Censorship on Facebook. Yeah. And so it's interesting what's going on in Facebook. And I need to, and I still haven't been able to find the contact information for the legal department, Facebook, because Facebook has told me before that they were throttling my posts, or they called it reduced exposure. I thought that was a temporary thing, but it's become quite clear to me that it's a permanent thing. But now that I'm a candidate for the legislature here in British Columbia, this is any sort of throttling of me, any censoring of me would be a violation of election tampering is what it would be, to throttle me and reduce my exposure while allowing my competition to have full reign to get their message out there. That's interfering in the democratic process. I need to be on an equal platform with the other candidates in this election. But I've had these censorship things put on me because I say these highly offensive things. Apparently I say that men can't be women. Oh my goodness, what a crime, right? So they need to censor me, apparently. But that can't happen during the election process. So what I've discovered recently is that they have algorithms and reduced exposure algorithms built into Facebook that are kind of glitchy, because when I do some posts, I can't even see the post. Like I'll post it, it'll go out there, and I'll go to say my timeline and look for the post that I just put on there. It's not there. Refresh it. It's not there. And it doesn't appear to be there. And then people will, some people will respond to my posts, a few anyway, to let me know that, okay, so it went out there, but I can't see it myself. Okay, so that's reduced exposure, where they sort of, and they call it invisible censorship because it's designed not to be detectable either by myself or by people following me. And there's they build in kind of a plausible deniability thing to sort of throw people off the track. So they can't just censor me in that sense across the board. They have to let some people see me, so they've got their plausible deniability, but they still reduce it. But there's something in their algorithm right now that is blocking some of my posts even from me. So people will be responding to posts that I can't even see anymore. But it's interesting because the way that the engine is working, eventually it will come up. So it's like they're interfering with the posts at the front end. When you first make the posts and stuff, when they're first released, they're allowing a very small percentage of people to see it, but keeping it away from most people. And then maybe, taking their foot off the brake after a day or two or something, because typically if I refresh later on, like a day or so later, I can see the post again. So it's like they throttle it at first but not later. But this can't continue. Okay, so I'm running for office now. I need to be on the equal playing field with the other candidates. So I need to find out some way to get in contact with the legal department of Facebook, and I may have to get like a lawyer to write a letter saying, listen, you can't tamper with the election process in British Columbia. You need to make sure people are on an equal footing in that regard. This is an important and valuable means of communication. I would call social media the most important and empowering development in the history of humanity in terms of empowering people themselves to communicate past the official channels of communication, and to communicate between each other and to organize between. This is a powerful tool, and it needs to be, I would say, embraced, but it also needs to be protected from manipulation. Right. So we don't want Facebook saying, okay, we've got 3 candidates here for this election. We're going to make sure this one candidate, his voice doesn't get out there and that the others can communicate. You can't do that. Okay. So there's got to be protections in to stop that. And there has to be some sort of accountability. And if I get into office, that'll be one of the things I'm going after right away is, listen, okay, this is an important tool. It's become a powerful tool. I think they did a study recently that 60% of people are getting their information primarily from social media these days. Okay, that is a powerful tool to control and shape public discourse and some people are talking about shutting it down. I don't think that that is the way to go, because that just returns power to the powerful completely. So we want to keep this channel of communication open, but we can't allow this censorship. And this is why I was so opposed to what Donald Trump did when he removed liability, or did that executive order removing liability media companies for, like, if I type something offensive about somebody on my Facebook, previously Facebook had an immunity provision where they're not legally responsible for what I type. I'm responsible for that, right? So Trump signed this executive order asking to remove that legal immunity from Facebook, in which case Facebook becomes legally liable for what I type. Okay. Now, what do you think is going to happen? And I said this right away. If this is going to make Facebook even more censorious, right, and censor even more, so that's a terrible thing to do. So I'm strongly opposed to that. But this is an issue that is a very serious issue, and it needs to be addressed because it's not a trifle. Right? It's not a trifle. The power that social media has to shape public opinion is a major issue, and it needs to be addressed. Did they correct the Times colonist issue? Let's just take a look. Find it. Can't say here. I don't even know where that was. Can't seem to find the story now. So I guess the answer, Paul, would be I don't know. But I'll check that again later. Yeah, I'll check it later. Okay. On Twitter, Twitter's another interesting thing. So Twitter banned me permanently for saying that a man, or actually for saying that I would never refer to a man as a woman, that I would never do that in public where it's important, like what people do privately in, at the dinner table at Boston Pizza or whatever. What they do in their private, I don't really care about that. But publicly, in the public discourse, it's important to keep us tethered to physical, knowable, testable reality. So I said that I would never refer to Morgane Auger, who's like me, a male that expresses in feminine ways. I would never refer to Morgane as a woman in public. And I was permanently suspended from Twitter for that. And we tried, myself and others, to try to create me a new account, and they had amazing tracking abilities and just kept shutting down one account after another. So they not only banned me permanently, they were aggressive about it. I have somebody who has a name that's similar to me. Her name was Jeanne Smith, and she tried to create a Facebook account in her name at the same time, and they nuked that account because her name was too close to mine. So they were really aggressive. So eventually we were able, through extraordinary means, to create a ghost account, basically, where somebody has set up an account to be my voice there. But that account, although it still exists, is heavily throttled. So it's kind of like Facebook, and people don't see my posts and stuff unless I go out of my way and sort of let people know one by one. That's the same thing on Facebook. If I want to go through my 2,500 contacts and let people know one by one, I can get to them. But I shouldn't have to do that. So anyway, I should probably wrap it up. I think I've given a neat little update. I think, going to cut my hair a little bit. just a little bit, just so it holds the curls better, because I like the big curls that stay in place and aren't as susceptible to, say, humidity. So I'm going to get my hair cut a bit. So maybe next time you see me, I might have a little shorter hair, but I won't chop it all off. I don't want, I like short hair. So for now, I'll just tune out and I will see you all later, and wish me luck, because it's a lot of work, and hopefully we can, using my attempt here as a vehicle, we can drag a lot of skeletons out of the closet. And who knows, miracles happen. Maybe the Red Sea will part and something will happen in this election. I'm certainly going to try my best, but it's going to be a lot of work. So thanks for tuning in, everybody, and I'll talk to you later.